Psycho is an all-time classic and was super unique and ahead of its time. Hitchcock made movies like no one else and many mystery films like Psycho.
Mr. Hitchcock, why do you always make mystery films?
Well, life is a big mystery, isn't it? It always has been.
Are you sure about that?
He also told people that he looked at Psycho in a comedic way. And while yes, it sounds ridiculous, you can actually watch it as a comedy.
I once made a movie, rather tongue-in-cheek, called Psycho.
Yes.
And of course, a lot of people looked at this thing and said, "What a dreadful thing to do! How awful!" and so forth. The content as such was, I felt, rather amusing, and it was a big joke, you know.
If this girl, Marion Crane, were here, you wouldn't be hiding her, would you? Not even if she paid you a lot of money?
No.
Oh shit, wrong movie. Where the hell did the blood come from? In the previous shot there was no blood on his face, and the knife hadn't even struck his face yet. And in the next shot he has a fucking big scar on his face. It just works better as a horror movie, with atmosphere, cinematography, and not to mention the suspense build up. I mean, nowadays we get shit like this fucking look at this.
We are facing an evil.
That shit is fucking trash!
The reason it was filmed in black and white was for budget reasons and not to make the movie too gory, like Hitchcock said, not to make it look scarier, but it works better in black and white. There's a light and dark side of Norman, so you can look at it in two ways why it is shot in black and white. Even back 60 years ago people enjoyed it, and nowadays it's regarded as one of the best, if not the best, horror movie to date.
I hate the illness.
Wouldn't it be better if you put her someplace?
You mean an institution? A madhouse?
Damn, I really enjoyed that, man. That was great. That was great.
It influenced the slasher genre, which includes movies like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, and of course the most infamous American Psycho, which is just pretty much Psycho but modern day, aka early 2000s. Hitchcock even promoted the movie in an interesting way, which caused more people to be interested in watching it.
Listen now to the heart of the policy.
I've suggested that Psycho be seen from the beginning. In fact, this is more than a suggestion. It is required.
No one, but no one, will be admitted to the theater after the start of each performance of Psycho.
I mean, why wouldn't you watch the whole thing anyways? Was this like a thing back in the day where people just didn't finish movies because, I don't know, they had better things to do, like play with rocks or some shit?
Fort!
Vem var det? Vem var det? Vem var det som kastade?
Or was it meant to be emphasized that the movie was too scary to finish and watch all the way to the end? Nonetheless, it was a success with critics and audiences. So, meanwhile I'm editing this, I'm actually drinking some Baileys, and it's actually really fucking good. If you haven't tasted Baileys, I would actually recommend it. It's good, it's gonna get me through this night, no problems. I guess we can start with the characters. So you learn the characters pretty well, and a lot of the characters are bad people. Like, the only real good person in this movie is, I guess, the cop, Marion, because she actually has a sense of heart and wants to return the money when she steals it. So, I mean, you can take this either way, but I think that Marion is a bad person at the start of the movie. By the time we get to learn more about her, when she actually wants to return the money, that's where I actually shift. So I actually think it's a good character and a good person in that sense. However, there's a bunch of people that are bad in this movie. Norman Bates, he's a good person, alright?
What?
Norman Bates, like Norman Bates. It's a good person, not Norman Bates. So obviously, if you've seen the movie, I mean, that's why you're watching this analysis, I hope. If not, I would encourage you to watch the movie, because it's a great movie and you won't be disappointed, and this video will be way easier to understand. You have two sides of Norman, because he has dissociative identity disorder. It's something where you have two people in your head. One is one person and one is the other person. And Norman has two, obviously himself and his mother, which is deceased. He actually killed her in the series, but it's unknown. It's up to the viewer to decide what happened in the movie, because we actually don't know what happened to her. But she's actually the bad character, and Norman is a good character.
All for you. I'm not hungry. Go ahead. I get your bags.
I mean, you can take it either way. I mean, Norman might not be the best person in the fucking world, but he has a lot more going for him than Norma has.
And they'll say, why she wouldn't even harm a fly.
Okay, so this is gonna be a little off topic, but I don't even want to talk about the terrible remake of this movie, because it's such a disgrace to the original, and it just cannot be as good as the original. No remake can be as good as the original, unless you're Scarface, okay? Then you can be better than the original. We've been wanting this shit to begin with. I mean, I don't even get remakes to begin with. No, I don't want a fucking remake of Scarface. I don't want a remake of Jaws. And Disney, they're already 10 steps ahead of all of you motherfuckers. They've remade their whole fucking library already. So, I mean, guys, what's wrong with the original? Just fucking watch the original, there's nothing wrong with it. The cop in the movie is a sense of depth in the universe. He has no idea what Marion has done, that being stolen the money, but the audience sure does know. He sees that Marion is acting a little weird, and as an audience member up to this point, we do not know if the cop knows something that we don't. Maybe the boss hired a cop to search for Marion, but obviously that's not what happened. But as it turns out, he was just following her because she was acting weird, and that happens all the time. You pull up to sleep to the road, you can't do that. If a cop sees you doing that, then you will probably be told not to do it and get the fuck out of there. Which happens in the movie.
Now hold it there. In quite a hurry.
Yes, I didn't intend to sleep so long. I almost had an accident last night from sleepiness, so I decided to pull over.
You slept here all night?
You can also take the part where the detective or the private investigator Arbogast goes to numerous hotels and motels before getting to the Bates Motel where the crime was committed. It's also been quite a few weeks as well, indicated by the conversation they have.
Did you stop here? Well, no one stopped here for a couple of weeks.
Thanks. Last 2 days, I've been to so many motels, my eyes are bleary with neon, but you know, this is the first place that looks like it's hiding from the world.
It feels like something is going on within the movie that the audience does not see, which might be a really obvious thing to have in a movie, world building and depth, but you shouldn't take that stuff for granted, because there's a lot of movies that don't do that at all. A good example of this is the sequel trilogy of the Star Wars movies. They pretty much had zero world building and depth and stuff like that. They did not even acknowledge the previous movies. But enough about that. Yes, this is also still part of the character portion of the video, since the world building kind of go hand in hand with characters, because the world is mostly built upon the actions by the character.
Anyway, I hear the expression "eats like a bird." It's really a falsity.
Dialogue in movies should be intriguing to the viewer, so they want to show interest. The script is probably the most important piece to a movie, and it is important that it fits the character, that the dialogue fits the character, and it makes sense what's coming out of their mouth. Good movies try to put as much thought into the dialogue as possible for it to mean something. I'm going to take Javier Bardem's performance in No Country for Old Men as an example. Imagine that he was given a weak script with no more information about the character he was portraying. We've all seen the movie, we all know what it's about. This iconic scene would not be the same if you just removed a few lines here and there.
Is something wrong?
With what?
With anything.
Is that what you're asking me? Is there something wrong with anything?
Well, I need to see about closing now.
See about closing?
Which might be just a little small thing to do, you know, remove a line here, a line there, but it just wouldn't be the same.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you?
The same goes for Psycho, just removing a line here and there the movie just wouldn't be the same because the dialogue has so much personality. Except for this fucking awful part, but we'll get to that later. Character reacts to different sorts of dialogue, it's just so natural and good. Let's look at this conversation they're having. Norman gets closer to camera when talking about more personal information and about his mother.
Well, it's more than a hobby. A hobby's supposed to pass the time, not fill it. What are you running away from?
Why do you ask that?
No. People never run away from anything. I don't hate her. I hate what she's become. I hate the illness.
Wouldn't it be better if you put her someplace?
You mean an institution? A madhouse?
Goes to show you that he can be a stable person as long as you don't talk about the wrong things with him. Psycho is a horror movie and ticks all the boxes to qualify as one. Suspense, fear, mystery, and a scary setting. Horror is not subjective. What scares you, however, is subjective. Take the reveal at the end as an example. The fact that Norma killed his mother and kept the body in the basement is disturbing as hell. But does it scare you? It might not, but it's still horrifying. Mystery is also a big part of this. One of the scariest things for us humans is the unknown, which includes things like the dark, strangers, woods, and non-civilized areas, which is why the movie works so well. It's set mostly during the night, the mystery or the unknown nature of Norman and Norma. The setting plays into this as well, with it being an old motel far from civilization. Let me just clarify this. Just because a movie has these traits doesn't mean that it is executed properly. I think we all can relate to sleeping in a motel or hotel, and there's just something about them that's creepy. The movie executes this really well, and the way Norman acts abnormal just adds to the whole creepy factor about the whole place.
You eat like a bird.
If you've seen my favorite horror movies video, you will know that I prefer movies that are set in a realistic world. Psycho is definitely one of those movies. And with that said, I have to clarify that one of my favorite movies of all time is set in an unrealistic world. So I don't hate them at all, don't get me wrong. It's just that you can relate to a movie so much more that's possible in our world. Can a movie like Psycho happen? Yes, it very well can happen. Can a movie like Alien happen? No. Can Confessions, Orphan and Raw happen? Oh yes. How about Evil Dead, Event Horizon and The Exorcist? Maybe, but even that's generous. You can't disprove ghosts or what will happen in the future, but since I don't believe in ghosts, it's a thing I can't get scared of as much as I can get scared of true stories with facts. Now let's talk about the movie as a whole. Firstly, Psycho is undoubtedly my favorite horror movie of all time. Hands down, it has to be. Just how well it is paced, acted, directed, the simple yet very effective story, the characters, the interesting shots. It was so unique for the time period it was released during, and it still is really unique. I recently just watched Fear Street Part 1 and Part 2, horror trilogy that recently came out on Netflix. Those two movies, it's not on the same level as Psycho at all. Neither is The Grudge, A Quiet Place, Seven, Jaws, The Wailing. Keep in mind, I love all these movies. Besides A Quiet Place, I don't like that movie. But for a horror movie that is over 60 years old, being my favorite says a lot about how unique it was and still is. Nothing has ever been able to replace it yet. I mean, I'm doing a whole fucking video about the movie just praising it. But it's not perfect. You probably know what I'm gonna talk about. Specifically, you know that one scene, the massive exposition dump by the psychiatrist at the end. Now I get it, the movie was released in 1960, but even back then, this wasn't like a huge new thing. Far from it actually. Many movies before it had characters with DID as it is shortened, before Psycho even came out. But exposition is really important in movies, so the viewer can understand and be on the same page as the characters. It'd be better if they did it more subtle, and not have like a 5-minute scene with nothing but just one specific thing. Imagine inside of the Lambs they have a 5-minute conversation about Hannibal and what he is, in the same room and nothing is going on. They kinda do, I guess, but even then we don't know anything about the character and we're building up to the reveal of Hannibal. In Psycho they just sit in one room and talk about it for hours, it feels like, this character, this normal character. Jurassic Park did a really good job explaining how they created dinosaurs, with giving information towards the character and alongside with the viewer. So the conclusion, Psycho is a great fucking movie. You won't regret it, and if you're watching a video without having watched Psycho, I highly fucking suggest you watch Psycho. Watch the movie, enjoy it. This movie is getting a 10 out of 10 from me.